Let's continue our discussion of section 1.4, where we would like to look at part 2, which is absolute value equations. This is on page 50 in your text, and I want to look at number 78 and number 82. So both of these equations contain absolute value, and your first step is always to make sure that your absolute value is isolated. So if you look at number 78, we can start solving that equation. Our absolute value is isolated on the left side. And remember, in order to solve, what we're going to do is we're going to break this up into two equations so that we don't have absolute value. 3x plus 1 equal to 8. 3x plus 1 equal to negative 8. So we break up our original equation into two parts with no absolute value, solve each equation, and then we'll have our answer. And so we're going to subtract 1 from each side, which gives us 3x equal to 7. Divide by 3. X is 7 over 3. So that's done. Second equation, subtract 1. 3x equals negative 9. Divide both sides by 3. X is negative 3. And so the first equation is now solved. Second equation, notice that the absolute value is not isolated. And so what we need to do is isolate the absolute value first, and then we're going to break this up into two equations. First step, subtract 6 from both sides. We get 2 times the absolute value of x over 4 minus 3 equals to 4. So we subtracted 6 from both sides. And then the last thing we're going to do to isolate the absolute value is divide by 2 on both sides, which leaves us with x over 4 minus 3 in absolute value equals to 2. Once the absolute value is isolated, we can use the procedure from number 78. And so we break up our equation into two equations. X over 4 minus 3 equals 2. X over 4 minus 3 equals negative 2. Make sure you understand that we do not change anything that has to do with the inside of the absolute value. These two are exactly the same. We only change the sign of the number 2. So we have a positive and we have a negative, and that gives us our two equations. And then we're just going to solve, so we can add 3 to both sides. We get x over 4 equal to 5. And in order to isolate the x, just make sure you multiply both sides here by 4. And I'm just using another color, but multiply both sides by 4. And so x is equal to 20. Notice that the 4 reduces. Okay, second part, multiply by, actually first add 3. So we get x over 4 equal to 1, and then multiply by 4 on both sides. 4 or 4 over 1. 4 cancels or reduces. We get x equals 4. And so we're done. So this procedure works for all absolute value equations. Just make sure that you isolate first and then start solving.